So I need to do another video. This one's going to deal with the current state of necromancy given the problems that the Terror of Loosland expansion has created because the developers made certain errors in their the way they did the necromancer class. Basically, the errors are one, proclamation of blood, the level 120 synergy spell still uses chaotic power 10, so it's only working for 115 and lower spells. The AA Mortifier's Unity casts the highest rank of Flesh to Venom, and that right now is a level 109 spell and does not work on the 116 to 120 spells from Terror Loosland expansion. Finally, Funeral Pyre as MrKveite1, one of my favorite people who monitor what I do and keep me honest, because he's very smart and he knows a lot, pointed out that Funeral Pyre was not upgraded, so it only works for 115 plus spells. Most of these, if not all of them, have been acknowledged bugs and will be fixed eventually. They've already started fixing a few. And of course, I should mention, we don't have our Type 3 augments yet. So there is an argument that you should not be using the 116 to 120 spells because they're going to do less damage, etc. So I wanted to look at that and kind of look at the numbers. And the way I did that is I've got my test dummy and I want to see if they actually do more damage. And why do I always memorize this one? Damage over time, because that's the wrong one to be casting. Oh, here we are. That's why. So the kind of way to find it out is I take off my fire focus, which is my sleeves, because that's random. And I'm not going to look at twin cast procs. I'm not going to look at critical damage. I want to see what the unfocused base damage for that spell is. In this case, using the old Pyre of Clagruk, I can hit that, and I go to my dots. And what we're seeing here is 66,053. So that's the base damage for the 115. Now I look at fire, the level 119, and I want to see what its base damage is. So we've got 66,000. Because remember, that has my Type 3 focus in. And we're seeing 52,940. Now, the Type 3 focus doesn't make as much a difference as you would necessarily think, because that number is divided by every tick. It's just the damage added to the entire spell. But still, right now, for various reasons, my fire dots, and I tested them all because I'm anal that way, are all better if I go with the level 115 and lower versions. So magic, fire, damage over time, fire. For instance, I'll use Broiling Shadow, and I will use damage over time. Okay, so for fire dots, I want to keep with my original dots. Now, mind you, all of these are a lot more mana. So that's something you may or may not want to consider. Now, if I look at extinction, let's start with the lower level dot, which is magic. And so we're going to go with Oblivion. And let's see what its base damage is. I start with the lower level because I can override it once I know the number. Oh, and I made a mistake, so let's go back. We'll put this on. And what is magic? That's my helm, I believe. Yeah. So I take off my helm. And so I messed that up a little bit. Because if I leave the helm on, it's going to the focus. The focus is a random number. So sometimes you're going to get a higher base damage. Sometimes you get a lower base damage. Okay, so let's hit here. Unfocused. See, the criticals are not helpful because those are random. And I'm critting. Great. So that's 37,316 is the base damage for Oblivion. Now let's see what the base damage for Extinction is. Now obviously I want the higher base damage if I'm not worried about mana and other things. There's a lot of factors that go into what you want to use. So let's go in Extinction. For instance, I have upgraded my Gift of Mana proc, which does work. So I can get Gift of Mana on the 120 plus spells and proc them. If you have not upgraded that yet, that's another factor that may go into your consideration. I've also slowly upgraded a lot of my focuses to where they may or may not be working. But this is testing, where I am at right now. So hit Extinction, and we want to is the below or above 37,316. Obviously, the fires were the lower spells did more damage. So 41,78 Sun. I'm doing slightly more damage with my Extinction. Obviously, there is a difference in how much mana it costs. And so that's something you may want to take into mind. But I'm going to keep my higher level spell because I am a DPS whore. And I want the higher damage, even though it's going to be a little more mana. Okay, we looked at the poison dots. And again, I found that the poison dots were all... And let's see, what is poison? I think poison is this poison. I'm going to take off both of these to make sure I'm right. So start with the lower level. And this is going to be a very dry video, and you may or may not want to listen through the whole thing. I've got a few things I'm going to say about tribute at the end, and that should be exciting because we all love tribute. Crystal Crawler Venom. So what do we got here for the base? 37,892. And we'll go for so 37,892, and this is probably gonna be around 41 or something if I'm guessing right. So we overwrite that, and now it's lucky critical, lucky critical, lucky critical, lucky critical. And this is why it's hard to tell unless you actually take off your focus and look at just the base damage, not your critical, etc. Here's just a base critical. Give me a non-critical. Okay, 42,346 is your base. That's higher, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you right now, the results are going to be similar for poison. I've already explained my reasoning why I'm sticking with the lower version of the combination dot. Now, was it an oversight that there is no combination dot? I'm thinking no. I'm thinking it's just too powerful. But maybe it was an oversight. We'll see. There's been no that has not been addressed. I am using Twilight Leech because I get a lot more. It's like the healing is a lot more in this case. So to me, it's worth it. Now, as I mentioned, Funeral Pyre is not going to focus any of your higher level spells. But if I use Funeral Pyre, and I do because I use it with Death Bloom, as I explained right here. I mean, Blood Pyre, Blood Magic, and Funeral Pyre. I think it's a beautiful combination. And they are going to fix it eventually. And if it doesn't work, well, it costs me nothing to use an AA that's useless. But since I'm using a mix of 115s and the 120 levels, I still will not change my hot button. So got that. We're keeping this Broiling Shadow. Now, what I'm using right now is the Mana Drain right here. And it's pretty nice. Okay, so it costs... let's put my gear back on, because I will forget to do that and then it will just be off for a while. So this costs between $13.78 and $19.91. So we're going to say it costs roughly 1,600 mana to cast. And you can cast that roughly every minute. I can tell you the refresh time once we get there. Nothing focuses the recourse. I have tried. There's no, anything that adds to the time of the spell, it will not focus the recourse. Anything that adds time to beneficial boons, it will not focus the recourse. So what you're going to get when you cast this, if you've got the AAs that I have, it says 24 seconds. It will actually last roughly 52 seconds. Now, if you divide that by 6, you're going to come up with 8 point something, 8.6 or whatever. So let's call it 8. Every tick of this spell gives you back 1462 mana. So 8 times 1462 is around 11,000. Let's call it 11,000 and change. Let's say whatever the spell costs, let's call it 10,000. So every time you cast this spell, and often you can cast it twice in a battle, you're gonna see a net benefit of 10,000 mana to you. Your mercenary will also see 10,000 mana. Your mercenary doesn't need the mana, but whatever. Everybody in your group, if you're in a group, will see 10,000 mana. I have found that this alone can go a long ways to taking care of my mana deficiencies. Obviously, I've also dropped back on some spells. So that's the mana. Now, so this is what I'm kind of using now. I'm using the 114 version of Pyre, the 117 version of Extinction, the 120 version of Venom, the 119 version of Haze. I'm still using the 115 version of the combination Disease Dot. I am using the 120 version of Twilight Leech. And I am using the 115 version of Broiling Shadow. I am using the 119 version of Mind Atrophy. That gives me the most bang for my buck. Okay, Call Skeleton Mass. Yeah, you're using that, the high version. Okay, Proclamation. Even though it only does chaotic power 10, the damage for this is 18,000 something for the 115 version, 31,326 damage for the 120 version. That extra damage, what the heck? I'm going to take the extra damage. and take a little bit of the mana hit. With these drops, I'm not having as big an issue of mana. I am using 117 version of Cascading Shield. There's no reason not to. And I use Inspire Ally. I use Cremate Bones. I use the 118 Heal. So those are kind of where I've made my decision on what's going on now until they fix everything. Once they fix everything, then I will be upgrading my spells, and I assume it will be fixed because otherwise, well, it's a messed up situation. So now let's talk Tribute. I said I was going to talk Tribute. So we go to Tribute, and for some bizarre reason, it doesn't show up here. But I'll tell you, I use two things. Twinge of Pain, that's going to give you about an extra tick on all of your dots, but you want to upgrade to the level 15 version so that it will give an extra tick to your 116 to 120 spells. They did put in an upgraded version from 14 to 15 Twins of Pain. If you're using any 116 and above spells, you want to upgrade your Tribute for Twinge of Pain. I also use Visions of Suffering, which decreases the mana cost of your dots by 15%. Now, let me show you what that means. What's a nice high mana spell? Okay, this is 7540 to 10891. That's the range that they give me. If I activate this, I have to actually reopen that to show. It goes to 7380, 10891. We're talking a couple hundred mana points. I mean, very little. On the other hand, Tribute is cheap. You know, it's costing me 254 plat every 10 minutes. I have 1.5 million current favor. I just turned in some crap gear. You know, you're getting 28 to 37,000 gold pieces per gear that you loot and can't use. You know, I've got a Sentai sword. I had no use for it. It's no drop. Turn it in for Tribute. So upgrade Visions of Pain if you want to use that. That's going to give you a little bit of a mana. Is it worth it? 127 gold every 10. I think it's worth it. But upgrade it to 15. Twinge of Pain, 100% worth it. Definitely worth it. You really want to be having your Tribute on whenever you're fighting. There should be some way to automate that. You know, there should be like an option. Do they have an option to turn Tribute off? Well, I don't see it, but I would hope they would have that option. Trophy Tribute Logout Auto Off. Tribute Logout Auto Off. So all you have to do is to remember to turn it on when you log in. Turn it on when you log in, and don't worry about it, assuming that Tribute isn't an issue for you at this level, and I would hope it isn't. Funeral Pile messed up. Proclamation 10 messed up. And Flesh to Venom totally messed up right now. There's no upgrade to that. But all of these things should be fixed. In the meantime, these are the decisions I've made, and I'm somewhat happy with this screwy situation they've got where we don't have your type 3 augments, etc. Anyways, these decisions I made take into account what I get from my type 3 augments. Not necessarily the best decision for mana, but it is the highest DPS decision, I believe. Other people may have different opinions. That's fine. Good talking to you guys. I will let you go for now.